I'm Kelly Nagle. We have reached the final episode of the first season of Here's the Problem podcast. Our season tackled some important social justice issues that continue to make headlines in the media. Mental health and access to care have never been more prevalent than in the midst of a pandemic that has killed more than 500,000 people and turned our lives and livelihoods upside down. Voting rights are back in the news, with each political party proposing vast changes to voting laws. And the amazing progress in the fight for gender equity, seeing the first female in the White House, is juxtaposed with the crushing realities of ongoing gender-based violence and the disproportionate impact COVID has had on women. But no matter what topic we discuss, there were two resounding themes. The first is students are incredibly well informed about social justice issues and equally as passionate to make a change. The second overwhelming theme is the importance of taking action on the local level. In our final episode, my Teen Think Tank Project co-founder Matthew DeSantis and I reflect on the podcast's first season and our first research cohort at the think tank. And we look forward to an exciting second season on Here's the Problem. Thanks to our listeners for joining us throughout this first season. We appreciate your support of thoughtful conversations, diverse perspectives, and our future changemakers. Enjoy today's episode. Well, hey again, Matt. Super excited to have you back on Here's the Problem podcast to really bookend this first season.
Hey, Kel, how you doing?
I'm good.
It's not very often I get invited back anywhere. So I appreciate the invite to come and recap all that we've done in this first season.
Well, there's nothing but love for you here at Here's the Problem. And this has been a really exciting season for a few reasons, and not just because it's our inaugural season and our voices have hit the airways, but it's also paralleled with our first research cohort. And when we first got together for our first episode of this season, we were really focused on bringing this vision that we had to life of giving teens a voice in this crazy world that they are going to inherit, and to see what happens when we do that. And here we are about 10 weeks later-ish. And we've been super pleased and amazed at what's transpired. So I'm excited to get your perspective. You've been working with the students very intensely in this cohort for the first semester, to share with our audience what's evolved, what amazing things have been happening behind the scenes, in addition to the 4 students who shared their passions and their incredible depth of knowledge on some really important social justice issues.
Yeah, it's been an amazing 10 or 12 weeks. In the midst of a pandemic and a recession, I'm like anybody else. You know, I'm old, I'm tired, I'm frustrated. Find it hard to find motivation, but there are 3 days every week that I jump out of bed, and I'm not a morning person. I don't jump out of bed for much. But every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday for the last 3 months, I've been ready to get at the day, because those are the days that coincide with Teen Think Tank activities. Podcast gets released every Monday, and Tuesdays and Thursdays are the meeting days of the inaugural cohort. And regardless of how much work and prep needed to go into getting to Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, I'm absolutely ecstatic when those days, when the calendar rolls around and we roll up our sleeves and get to work. It's been a tremendous experience, not only because we are, in my opinion, doing real work, doing important work, but we're doing important work with people who care about what we're doing. And not only the students, but the guests of the podcast and the supporters and the presenters and those who see what we're doing as valuable and contributing their own time and energies to the project. It's been unbelievable.
In just a few weeks, the whole world's going to get to see the absolutely amazing, thoughtful work that they are creating. Because their final project is coming out. They've decided to do an unveiling of their final project. And then in season 2 of Here's the Problem, we'll be delving into the exact topic that they're working on, which is sports and social protests, and talking to amazing thought leaders, athletes, activists, leaders in that space. And that season will culminate with the students' project and really an in-depth look at what they've digested and how they've thought critically about it and how they envision change happening.
It's really a unique exercise because we're tackling this revelation, for lack of a better term, from two different perspectives. So at the immediate conclusion of the cohort, these students are going to be presenting their policy framework. And onset of the program, I was hopeful that they would put out a thoughtful research piece or white paper. I thought that'd be a success. But what they have developed and what they are going to release is beyond my wildest dreams. They're putting out a scholarly article, a research paper, a mini documentary, and a children's book based on their research.
Amazing.
And that deserved a requisite amount of attention, so much so that we're going to celebrate all of that work and formally recognize that in what we've termed a launch party. Essentially, it'll be a webinar presentation. We're going to do that middle of April once they finalize all of their content, and they are going to give you their interpretation of their experience, which is invaluable to hopefully to them, but definitely to me and definitely to us as a program. At the same time, the Teen Think Tank Project, for the benefit of Here's the Problem podcast, is working on a podcast episode that focuses on our perspective as an institution and perhaps an objective perspective of their journey through that process to create their own interpretation of their work. Because we've got 36 to 45 hours worth of content in which we are seeing a behind the scenes development of the story that they're about to tell and the journey they took to get there. And that will be presented as the final episode of Here's the Problem podcast season 2. But in between, we have these very valuable voices and contributors to the program who agreed to not only sit down with you in podcast form, but also appear in front of the group to discuss these topics. And it's just a very wonderful, well-formed narrative and a very personal and relatable presentation of a very important subject matter, which is racial inequality and specifically social protest in sports. And in season 1, I was simply proud of the fact that we got through it without losing any episodes, or we didn't have any technical issues, right? That was just a job well done on our part. Season 2 is so much more than that. Season 2 is, I'm proud of how that content came together to tell a legitimate story. And to me, that's meaningful because hopefully that story will be absorbed by more than the 9 exceptional high school honor students that I've had the pleasure of dealing with over the last 12 weeks. Hopefully it'll be more impactful on folks other than you and I. Hopefully it'll be impactful to the listeners and the supporters of our program that tune in and download and participate in receiving the message.
A big thank you to my Teen Think Tank Project co-founder, Matthew DeSantis, for wrapping up this first season with me. I'd also like to thank all those who made this podcast possible, our wonderful production team, the George Milton Group, and Winnie the Mooth for our theme song. And most importantly, I'd like to thank you, the listener. Let us know you're listening. Subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And follow the podcast at problem_pod. Season 2 is right around the corner with powerful and enlightening conversations about sports and social justice. Next season, I talk with current and former basketball players, leading human rights activists, sports lawyers, journalists, and athletic directors to gain their perspectives and learn from their expertise. For more information on today's topic, or to find out more about social justice programming for exceptional teens, please follow the Teen Think Tank Project at teen_think tank, or visit us at teenthinktankproject.com. Until next season, I'm Kelly Nagle.